Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So happy to have you here joining me for another video. I hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas and enjoying the days after the holidays doing nothing. Yeah, what should I say? I have been MIA for such a long time. I think the last video I uploaded was like beginning of this year. So yeah. But a lot has happened. I basically moved halfway across the world and yeah, if you want to know more about that, you can always follow me on Instagram. And yeah, I definitely want to be more active now. And yeah, the thing is, I actually already recorded this whole video, but I have to record it once again because it's getting dark very early, especially now in the winter month, and I was not really used to that anymore. So I was actually recording at around 3 p.m. I was thinking it's gonna be fine, but turns out it was not. The quality was so bad that I just couldn't upload it, so I decided to do everything all over again. The thing is, the case I'm going to be talking about is actually a Christmas case, so it happened on a December 26th, and I really wanted to upload it on December 26th as well, but that didn't work. So now I am re-recording on December 27th, and I will try everything to get it up today in the evening, so hopefully that's gonna work. And we're gonna be talking about a case that's, I think, the most famous case that ever happened around Christmas time. And it's such a complex case. There is so much information out there. I was really trying to kind of like compress the main things to the video. I'm also pretty sure I left things out. So, because there's just like so much. There's so many articles, there's so many videos, there's so much content on the internet. It's crazy, but I also wanted to talk about it because I really find it so interesting and I really want to know what happened. I think I do have kind of a theory as to what happened, and I'm gonna talk about it also in the end. But let's stop talking and let's get into it, because today we're gonna be talking about the unsolved murder of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey. JonBenet Patricia Ramsey was born on August 6, 1990 in Atlanta, Georgia, to her parents JonBenet and Patsy Ramsey. So actually JonBenet's name was a combination of both of her parents' first names, which is JonBenet, and then she has her middle name Patricia from her mom, but her mom usually goes by Patsy. JonBenet also had an older brother. His name was Burke, and he was born in 1987, making him 3 years older than her. The family moved from Georgia to a town named Boulder in Colorado when JonBenet was only 1 year old because of her father's work. So JonBenet was actually a successful businessman, and at that time he was the president of a company called Access Graphics, and he was very successful. By the time of JonBenet's death, John was reported to be a multi-millionaire, and that is why they were able to afford this beautiful house in Boulder. Now, because of John's wealth, Patsy didn't actually have to work. She did have a university degree in journalism, but by the time the children were born and John was successful in his career, Patsy decided to stay home and look after the children. And apart from that, she was also very involved in the local community. She was supporting a lot of charities, she was supporting the local school, and she was just very involved. And this made her have a lot of friends and a big social circle. In an interview with Women's Magazine, Patsy actually stated the following: "Being a mother and mentor to my children is the most important role I will play in my life. It is certainly the most difficult job I will ever have." Now, apart from being involved in the local community, another thing that Patsy really enjoyed was beauty pageants. In 1977, when Patsy herself was only 20 years old, she was competing in her home state, West Virginia, and she actually won the title of Miss West Virginia. Now, since Patsy was becoming a little bit too old to now personally engage in beauty pageants anymore, she got the idea that maybe her daughter, JonBenet, could participate instead. And so Patsy was still around this beauty pageant scene, and she could just get her daughter there and to kind of get her daughter to inherit her love for this kind of thing. So JonBenet could continue living Patsy's dream, and Patsy enrolled her daughter in multiple pageants, and JonBenet actually won many titles in these competitions, such as America's Royal Miss, Little Miss Colorado, and National Tiny Miss Beauty. In the pictures that show JonBenet during these beauty pageants, we can see her like all styled up with her hair and makeup done, not at all looking like a 6-year-old child. There are some theories that the public picture that was made of JonBenet at this point could have grabbed the attention of a future murderer. It is said that even John, JonBenet's father, was a little bit concerned over these pageants. Like, he didn't really like that his daughter was exposed like this, and this was basically for the same reasons that I just mentioned. He thought it was dangerous to present children like this, and it was just inappropriate to have little girls dress up as basically adults. But Patsy in the end convinced him that everything was fine, and she already knew this industry, nothing would happen, and she was just having so much fun. Patsy also said that JonBenet really loved acting and she was really enjoying her time there. So Patsy just kept on doing what she was doing, and JonBenet would attend actually a number of these beauty pageants before her death. Now we are on Christmas Day, which was December 25th of 1996, and it was just a regular Christmas day for the Ramsey family. The family had this like little tradition where they would all make pancakes and hash browns, a nice breakfast in the morning, and they would have breakfast all together as a family. And later on for dinner, they had plans to visit a friend's house so they could all have Christmas dinner together with their friends. On the next morning, December 26th, Patsy actually woke up early around 5 a.m. and I guess she just couldn't sleep anymore, so she went downstairs from their bedroom, which is located on the 3rd floor of their giant house. She went down to the kitchen, which is located on the 1st floor, to make some coffee and start making some breakfast ready. While she was waiting for her coffee to get ready, she noticed some papers lying on the ground, and those papers seemed a bit odd. It was 3 pages from her own notepad, but she did not remember writing any of these papers and putting them to the floor, so she was a bit suspicious. What is this? And she just picked the papers up, and those papers were what is now the infamous ransom note in the JonBenet Ramsey case. The ransom note was 2.5 pages long, which is really long for a ransom note, and it's kind of weirdly written. I'm just gonna read it to you now. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want to see her in 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure you bring an adequate size attached to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The 2 gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good southern common sense of yours. It's up to you now, John. Victory. SBTC. After reading the ransom note, of course, Patsy freaks out and immediately runs up to JonBenet's room, which is located on the second floor of the house, to check if she was in her bed sleeping. Patsy, in fact, did not find JonBenet in her room and panicked even more, and she called 911 immediately, even though it was mentioned in the ransom note that she should not alert the police. Now, she informed 911 of her daughter being kidnapped, and 2 officers will be sent to the house right away. Shortly after getting off the phone with 911, Patsy, who was, as I said, very active in the local community and had a lot of friends, she called several of her friends over to come to the house. They already planned on organizing search parties, and they just wanted to discuss basically what to do next, like how to handle the situation, even though it was, again, mentioned in the ransom note not to contact anyone. So the first 2 police officers arrived to the house around 3 minutes after Patsy's 911 call and conducted only a superficial search of the property, and they actually locked JonBenet's bedroom, so nobody was allowed to go in. There was no contamination of any possible evidence or any possible crime scene. However, the rest of the house was not locked, nothing was protected. As I said, Patsy already invited several of her friends over, and those friends actually came to the house. And everyone was just running around the house, like leaving fingerprints, leaving footprints. Some of her friends even started cleaning the house for some reason. I think they were just thinking they will support the family in that way. But of course, having so many people all over the place was destroying any evidence that might have been there. It is unclear why the police officers just let that happen in this way. I don't know why they didn't tell the people okay to stay out or to meet somewhere else. The house was a possible crime scene, but nothing of this happened. So this was also heavily criticized afterwards, that the first responding officers at the crime scene did not particularly make the greatest job. Around 8 a.m., also Boulder detective Linda Arndt arrived at the house because they were anticipating to receive any further instructions by the kidnappers. As you might remember, it was mentioned in the ransom note that the kidnappers would call again between 8 and 10 a.m. to arrange the delivery of the money in exchange for JonBenet. However, this call never happened. So the initial 911 call was made at 5:52 a.m. And then finally at 1 p.m., which was a full 7 hours after the initial call, Detective Arndt finally ordered a deeper search of the house since they did not hear of the kidnappers again. So I'm also asking myself, why would you wait 7 full hours? Okay, even if you want to wait until you receive further instructions of the kidnappers wanted to call between 8 and 10 a.m. So why would you still wait another 3 hours to finally start searching the house? In order to find out if basically anything was maybe missing from the house or anything was out of the ordinary, Detective Arndt sent JonBenet and one of his friends down to the basement to conduct a search. Shortly after John and his friend were descending to the basement, you could hear a very loud scream from the basement. It was actually John's voice, and shortly after, John and his friend made their way upstairs, and John was carrying the lifeless body of his 6-year-old daughter, JonBenet. According to John's statement to the police, he found his daughter's body with her mouth covered with duct tape, a nylon cord around her wrist and neck, and her torso covered in a white blanket. Now, while John was obviously in shock by the discovery of his daughter's body, he actually made a big mistake carrying her upstairs instead of just leaving her body in the basement, alerting the police officers first. Now, of course, I do understand he was in shock. He didn't really know how to handle the situation, but this is the reason why he shouldn't have been left alone with his friend to go to the basement. There should have been an officer at least going with them in case something like this might have been found. Because with John's actions, of course, the crime scene was contaminated further and possibly destroying any forensic evidence that might have been there. Now, nevertheless, the police started to investigate the crime scene, and the first thing they found in the basement was a broken window. So in the same room where JonBenet's body was found, there was actually a broken basement window, and investigators found an intact spider web in the window. And additionally, they found that the snow lying outside to where the window was has not been touched, meaning there were no footprints in the snow or anything. So these circumstances made the police think that whoever killed JonBenet did not use this window as an exit. So they either used a different exit or they were still in the house. Now, at a later stage, John actually told the investigators that he was the one who broke the window, like weeks before the incident happened, because he locked himself out of the house. So the broken window was therefore most likely unrelated to the death of JonBenet, and whoever committed the crime found themselves a different entrance and exit to the house. Of course, an autopsy was conducted, and it showed that JonBenet's cause of death was strangulation and a skull fracture. The manner of death was determined as homicide. Additionally, there has been found some unknown male DNA in JonBenet's underwear, which was not able to be matched with anyone who was present at the house. Now we're going to be talking about the most popular theories, and there are actually some in this case. Usually there are like two main theories. One of them is that one family member had something to do with JonBenet's murder, and the other theory is that it was an unknown intruder who came to the house. So a theory that is actually still quite popular in the court of public opinion is that one of the parents, or maybe both of them, were responsible for JonBenet's murder and just covered it all up. Now, a major contributor to this theory is actually the strange looking ransom note that has been found in the kitchen. Because for one, the paper on which the ransom note was written was found to be from Patsy's own notepad. Furthermore, it was found that on the notepads there have actually been 2 attempts to write the note. So somebody was trying to write the note but didn't really like what they were writing or anything, threw the note and wrote another one, which meant that whoever wrote the note actually spent a good amount of time on it. And the question is, like, wouldn't a kidnapper have already brought the note to the crime scene instead of spending time writing it in the house and risking to be found? And another point was actually the odd amount of money the kidnappers claimed. Because as you might remember, the kidnappers claimed an amount of $118,000 in ransom money, which was really not a usual amount. Like, if you were a kidnapper, wouldn't you claim maybe $200,000, $500,000, maybe $1 million? Because the Ramseys were really wealthy and this was known in the community. But $118,000 is really an odd amount. And what is even more strange is that this exact amount was actually the amount of money that John got from his company as a Christmas bonus this year. And remember, this is just the day after Christmas, so he just got this amount of money. The exact amount is mentioned as ransom money, and it kind of leaves you to think that whoever wrote the note must have known about John's Christmas bonus at this point. Now, this kind of weird circumstances made investigators think that the alleged kidnapper was either somebody of maybe John's co-workers, somebody who was involved in his company, somebody who knew about the bonus money that John received that year, or it was somebody in the family who also knew about the money. Now, there has been some investigations into John's co-workers. However, no further evidence was found in any connection to any co-worker, and nobody was further suspected of the crime. In an interview in the year 2000 with Larry King, the former Boulder police detective Steve Thomas recalled that he was actually leaving the department and leaving police work behind because of this case. He stated the following in the interview and shared his theory to what has happened to JonBenet. He stated the following: "Because I felt that Patsy is involved in this death, in this tragedy, and I felt that it had become such a debacle and was going nowhere. Out of frustration, I left the case and police work. I think there was a toileting issue that night that has been dismissed and underplayed. Instead of making a right turn, she made a left turn and covered it up." Now, Steve Thomas was actually thinking that maybe there was an issue in the night from December 25th to December 26th that JonBenet was wetting her bed and alerting her mother, Patsy. Patsy somehow freaked out about this and got so upset that she hit JonBenet over the head, causing the skull fracture. And then Patsy alerted John of the situation. They decided to strangle their daughter and to cover the whole thing up, making it look like a kidnapping, writing the ransom note and just going to bed like nothing ever happened, alerting authorities the next morning. Now, even though both John and Patsy were exonerated of the crime by DNA evidence in 2008, this theory is still widely popular. Now, another theory was that apart from JonBenet's parents, also maybe her brother Burke, who was 9 years old at the time of JonBenet's death, could have been involved in the murder. Now, at JonBenet's autopsy, it was detected that she had pieces of pineapples in her stomach that were not yet digested, and this is how the following theory fell into place. Many people hold the opinion that in the night of JonBenet's death, her brother Burke, who was 9 years old, as I mentioned, went down to the kitchen because he was hungry and he was making himself a bowl of pineapples with milk. This was something they were eating quite frequently. JonBenet woke up from the sounds that Burke made in the kitchen and followed him downstairs. She saw the pineapple in the bowl and she figured, okay, I could also have a piece of pineapple. I'm also hungry. So she actually snuck up to Burke, she stole some pieces of pineapples, and in this situation, Burke allegedly lost his temper and hit her over the head with an object, explaining the fractures to the skull as well. Now, protecting their son from getting into trouble, John and Patsy covered up the crime by strangling JonBenet, hiding her body, and writing the ransom note, blaming a random stranger for the murder. To support this theory, a closer look at Burke's personality was taken. A family friend of the Ramseys reported to the newspaper The Sun that Burke was known for emotional outbursts. And it was also seen as suspicious on how Burke was reacting in his only interview he ever gave as an adult. So Burke came to the Dr. Phil show to give an interview, and he was very adamant that this would be the only interview he would ever be given in regards to the case. And in this interview, he was kind of constantly smiling. He was showing a bit of weird body language. And this was seen as kind of a red flag to many people who watched the show. In the same interview, Burke also stated his own theory of what he thinks might have happened to JonBenet. He thinks that, quote, probably some pedophile in the pageant audience, end quote, broke into the Ramseys' house, and this person was responsible for the crime. Burke was exonerated by DNA evidence in 2008 alongside with his parents, but same as with the theory about his parents being involved, also the theory that Burke might have been involved in the crime stays widely popular. Now, the theory that actually Burke had mentioned on the Dr. Phil show is another very popular theory, and it is also what I would think might have most probably happened. So you have to bear in mind that this case happened in 1996, and during that time, of course, the internet was not yet a thing, or maybe it just started becoming a thing, but it was definitely not like it is nowadays. There was no social media, and while it is, of course, also scary to think about that nowadays there are a lot of pedophiles and other molesters that are active on social media, you also have to think what these people did in the 1990s. So basically they could not stay in hiding that much, but they went out to, let's say, the real world to kind of, look at children in that way, which is really scary. And I personally do think that these beauty pageants that JonBenet attended were very risky and were probably watched by these exact people. I think that there was probably a man, and this man was probably acting alone, who was sitting in the audience and somehow was attracted to JonBenet in that way. And I think maybe this person one day followed them to the home. Maybe he already knew where the Ramseys were living because the Ramseys were such a wealthy and well-known family in the community. Also, another thing we should mention is that Patsy always took a great pride in her Christmas decorations. So she would always decorate the whole house inside and outside with a lot of Christmas lights. And since many people were like really impressed by Patsy's artworks she was creating there, Patsy often hosted some tours of the house. So she invited strangers in who were looking at the Christmas lights. So it could have very well been that this person from the pageant audience went to the Ramsey's house and took one of the tours that Patsy organized to see the Christmas lights. However, this person was not interested in the Christmas lights, but he just wanted to get familiar with the house to see how he can break in. Now, additionally, at the crime scene where JonBenet's body was found, there was also an unidentified suitcase that was found next to the body, and there was an unidentified boot mark found on the ground. It was never determined to who either the suitcase or the boot print belonged to, along with the unknown male DNA in JonBenet's underwear. So these 3 points of evidence are very well pointing to the theory of an unknown intruder. Now, it could have very well been that the intruder was either planning to kidnap JonBenet and to use the suitcase to hide the girl in, to abduct her, or it was initially planned to kill JonBenet and to transport her body in the suitcase. Now, I personally would believe that the intruder did not plan to kill JonBenet to begin with, but that it happened by accident. I would think that somebody was unfortunately sexually attracted to JonBenet and planned to kidnap her for 2 reasons. One was to bring his disgusting fantasies to life, and the other one was to get hands on some of the money of the Ramsey family. So I believe the intruder came into the house, wrote the ransom note, placed it upstairs in the kitchen, took JonBenet to the basement, and I think that JonBenet maybe was trying to fight her attacker. Maybe she was trying to get rid of him, maybe she was screaming, and the attacker was just scared that he might have been found from the noise that JonBenet was making. So he was trying to shut her up, trying to keep her calm, and accidentally killed her that way. He then panicked and left the house immediately, leaving JonBenet's body behind, forgetting about the suitcase and also forgetting about the ransom note. Now, on the night that JonBenet was killed, there had been 2 windows that were slightly left open because of the cords of the Christmas lights that were outside. The cords had to somehow get into the house, right, to get power. So 2 windows were slightly left open, and also 1 door was found to be unlocked. So there was actually more than 1 chance for an intruder to enter and exit the house without leaving any trace. It was determined that there had been more than 100 burglaries in the Ramsey's neighborhood in the month before JonBenet's murder. There were 38 registered sex offenders living within a 2-mile radius of the Ramsey's home, and in 2001, former Boulder County prosecutor Trip DeMuth and Boulder County Sheriff's Detective Steve Ainsworth stated that there should have been a more aggressive investigation on the intruder theory. Even though there were a few different suspects named to be in connection with the crime, all of them were ruled out again due to DNA evidence. Now, the following is not really an active theory anymore because the person had been ruled out as well, but we should talk about somebody that actually made a confession of killing JonBenet Ramsey. The person was a man named John Mark Karr, and I have to say that John was afterwards living as a transgender woman under the name of Alexis, but I will call him John since he was living as a man while the following events took place. Now, there's not much known about John's early life. However, there has been information about his criminal career. And in 2001, John was living in San Francisco with his former wife and 2 children, and he was working as a school teacher in the Napa Valley. John ended up being a suspect and being formally charged with the murder of a 12-year-old girl by the name Georgia Lee Moses back in 1997 in Santa Rosa, California. Now, in connection with this investigation, police went to search John's home, and while searching the home, they actually found out that he was a pedophile because they found several images and videos of child pornography. Now, for some reason, the prosecution, however, failed to raise a case against John in this crime, and John decided to flee the country and move to London for a while. He stayed in London for 5 years, and he pretty much lived under the radar because not even his own family knew where he was going or that he was even still alive. In 2006, while John was currently residing in Thailand, he sent a bunch of incriminating emails to a man named Michael Tracy, who was working on a documentary about the JonBenet Ramsey case at the time. And one of John's emails to Michael read the following: "Close your pretty eyes, sweetheart. Davis loves you so much. Oh God, I love you, JonBenet. And my lover's eyes are slowly closing." On grounds of these emails, John was arrested in Thailand and flown into the United States, where he was formally charged with the murder of JonBenet Ramsey. John cooperated with the police and actually provided a full confession, and he claimed to have drugged, sexually assaulted, and mistakenly killed JonBenet in the night of December 26, 1996. Shortly after, however, it was determined that John was in fact not JonBenet's killer, since his DNA did not match the DNA at the crime scene. And furthermore, in his confession, John only used very public information. He didn't state anything about the case that was not known to the public at this time. And police basically just called him a fame-hungry pedophile who somehow just wanted his name to be connected with the infamous case. After the charges were dismissed, John changed his name to Alexis and started living as a woman. John, or Alexis, continued to get into trouble with the law several times, but has continued to be ruled out as the murderer of JonBenet. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, this case is really so complex, and I am sure I have not covered everything now. If I would cover everything that there is, I would still sit here tomorrow, but I really tried to include the main things. And this case is really one of the most interesting unsolved cases that are out there. And even though I have kind of made up my mind on what I think has happened, because I do support the unknown intruder theory, there are still things that do not make sense to me. For one, there would be the amount of money claimed on the ransom note. And I really can't wrap my head around how the intruder knew of John Ramsey's Christmas bonus, possibly. Because otherwise, why would you claim $118,000? It would have been a huge coincidence if you did not know about the Christmas bonus, but you would just claim the exact amount of money as a ransom money. So, and I'm thinking even if the criminal was somebody who knew about that amount, why would you even claim this amount? Because wouldn't it incriminate you? You would maybe get into a closer circle of suspects because you knew about the amount and the police was investigating people that knew about the amount. It was publicly known that the Ramseys were a wealthy family. You could just claim maybe $150,000. That would make it a little less suspicious, at least. But yeah, it is also really infuriating on how the crime scene was handled to begin with. Because I say it again, after Patsy's initial 911 call that was placed at 5:52 a.m., it took the police, it took less than 5 minutes for the first 2 police officers to arrive to the house. So for sure, they arrived earlier than Patsy's friends that she called in. So why did the first officers not just secure the whole house? Maybe the friends could meet somewhere else, because the house was a possible crime scene. So all the friends, all the commotion, everything was happening in the house. Everyone was panicked. Everyone was running around. People were cleaning the house. It was destroying any forensic evidence that might have been there. And even though JonBenet's body was not found at that time, the house was also a place where a possible abduction took place. So it should not have been entered or touched or anything until a team of forensics would arrive. Additionally, why would you wait a full 7 hours after the initial 911 call to conduct a deeper search of the house? I mean, even though a ransom demand was made, why would you wait so long? You were there since 6 a.m. and also Detective Linda Arndt was there since 8 a.m. Just search the house. I mean, you are already there. Already people are contaminating the crime scene. You can as well just search the home. And another mistake was obviously sending John Ramsey and his friend down to the basement alone. Not only did John cause a major contamination of the crime scene by moving JonBenet's body, but also nobody knew at that point, like, who was responsible for the crime. It could have very well been that John was the one responsible, and now they are sending them to the basement, so all of his fingerprints, everything would anyways be on the body, or anything that he might have found, because they didn't know yet that the body was there. But also, how would they ever find out if John had a connection to the case, if his fingerprints were there because he was searching the basement? You know what I mean? They should have just sent officers to the basement, or I mean, who knew? Maybe the intruder was still down there and it was even a big risk for John to go to the basement alone. But yeah. There are actually so many questions in this case, and sadly at this point we will possibly never find out what really happened to JonBenet. Even though it's never impossible, like there are cases that have been solved 30, 40, 50 years after they happened, but it really remains one of the biggest mysteries of our time, and I would really like to know what you think. I would love to read some theories in the comments, and yeah, I think it's just a very interesting case to talk about and to discuss. And of course it is, above all, it is very sad that little JonBenet lost her life way too soon at only 6 years old. So that's basically all I have for today, and until the next video, which will be up in early 2024, because we're almost there, I wish you a great rest of the year, and I will see you soon. Bye!